Titanfall. Big fan of it. I had a blast with the single player. You weren't wild about it, but thing about that game is it's selling really poorly, and everyone's like, "Oh, is this the last Titanfall game?" And it's like, no, man. They don't.
Yeah.
You don't spend that much time building the guts of something just to scrap it.
Yeah, I think it'll sell pretty well, all in all. I mean, obviously, it went head-to-head with Battlefield 1, and then Call of Duty next week, and Hero of War, whatever that game was. So it's Honor of Heroes. It's kind of in a weird spot, and it's weird for EA to put out 2 AAA shooters within a week of each other. But people worry that this franchise is going to go away. Absolutely not the case. We got a quote from EA in one of their earnings calls the other day. They said, "We are working with Respawn to build a franchise. This is something that we plan to be working with them on for many, many years to come. And there's huge opportunity inside of that franchise to continue to expand it. And so part of the strategy of building a franchise is you have a long view. Think about the business differently than you might existing franchises like FIFA or Madden. And what that means is we're looking for ways to not fragment the player base early, but to include as everybody as possible as we continue to build that franchise."
Yeah,
I love that.
I think it's pretty safe to say that, maybe not safe to say, I might talk out my ass here, but I think this could be EA's equivalent of Destiny. Like, this is them kind of partnering sort of with a studio that they don't exactly, they don't own Respawn, do they? Respawn, I think, is still independent. But they definitely have a deal with them, and they're publishing, Titanfall, and they're building a new universe. And it's like, it's not based on a sport, it's not based on an existing property. And they're like, all right, from the ground up, what do you guys want to do? And they're like, okay, robots.
Yeah.
So obviously there's going to be more Titanfall games. That seems like kind of a definite. I think they maybe have a mobile game in the works. I feel like that was a thing we heard about.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a franchise we're going to see everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like within the next few years there'll be like bite-sized VR experiences. There'll be probably single-player only stuff, multiplayer only stuff. I mean,
probably novels.
Yeah, for sure.
McFarlane toys,
action figures, snacks. There already are action figures.
So the big question is, where does it go?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing with it?
So what I really like about Titanfall 2 is that it completely expands and grows upon the seeds they planted in the first one. And I'm not completely in love with the single player like other people are, but I absolutely understand the potential of where it's going. So what I really like is the kind of buddy cop thing going on between the protagonist and your Titan, and I really want to see more of that. I want to see that sort of bond develop at a young age, in the same way that, like, I don't know, it's in Star Wars, it's like you have a droid when you're a kid, or your first lightsaber. That's sort of like picking up the needle and moving it somewhere else in the timeline or in the universe, to sort of see, like, how is this robot, human conflict affecting the rest of the world.
Yeah, I definitely want to see less of a serious military approach, which is kind of the thing. It's still got kind of the trappings of Call of Duty, and obviously they're going after that crowd. I don't see them being like, all right, here's a game where you play as a kid and you friends with the robot, because it is still an M-rated shooter franchise. But I think that Titanfall could totally benefit from borrowing a few ideas from the Gundam series. Obviously, if you're unfamiliar, Mobile Suit Gundam is one of the longest running kind of mech anime series. And it starts out, there's kind of the original one, which is all about kind of similar stuff to what Titanfall is dealing with. You got warring factions in space, and they have robots, and they fight each other with them. But there's some later Gundam stuff that's still set in that timeline. One of them does involve a kid who's living on like this space colony. It's called War in the Pocket, and it's about this kid who basically finds a crashed robot suit, and he's all like crazy about robots. And it just got that kind of like, it's sort of like Cinema Paradiso if instead of an old movie theater, it's a giant mech.
I like that.
But I mean, there's a lot of cool stories. You can take really any story. I think my favorite Gundam series is the 8th MS Team, which is effectively like Platoon or like some kind of Vietnam War epic, but set in Southeast Asia, but with robots. And there's this awesome whole thing where like there are dudes doing like kind of guerrilla tactics to take down robots. Like, it's kind of like the end of Return of the Jedi, where there's Ewoks setting up traps and everything, but they're human people attacking robots. But yeah, like, I'd love to see smaller scale, higher concept Titanfall stories.
That I really like.
This one kind of bounced all over the place.
It did. And the way they kind of spread it out a little bit was, it did really feel like military shooter-ish, but I did like the new environments. I love the diversity environments, especially. That sort of like worn, torn, overgrown future thing.
Yeah, it's fun.
I want something that's sort of like Neil Blomkamp's District 9 meets Iron Giant, you know?
I like that.
Like sort of shades of like, let's see this clash between humans and the way everything else works in this universe. Also, like, I really, really dug, without spoiling it at all, because I really want you to play this, but some of the sci-fi weaponry they get into in this game is really, really cool. Like, it's sort of like, it's
like that ninja star that sets fires.
More than that. I mean, there's specifically a trigger about halfway through the game that lets you kind of mess with the space-time continuum a little bit.
I want that scaled back. I'd like more stuff that's just like, maybe were given basic commands to the Titan. You know, like kind of in the single player, you could hop out of the Titan more or less at any point, and it would go around and you know, do stuff for you.
Yeah.
Kind of it had your back. But I'd love to see where there's sort of like a kind of a almost a Last Guardian element where you're like, hey, go over there, do that, and maybe it's like, oh, I'm doing it, and like walks through a wall.
I do love that because the way the campaign is set up now, it sort of strategically points you in a way that you continue to lose your Titan and regain him. It kind of just feels like losing your dog a bunch and getting back in his embrace. So it's a little interesting to see the future of this franchise go where it could possibly go. It's not going away.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is going to be a huge thing for many, many years to come. I'm really excited about EA having the Star Wars license and them having Titanfall and just making really cool sci-fi robot action games.
I'm never gonna complain about there being more big robots.
Yeah,
you know,
never.
Like I love mech stuff, so it's cool to have like a 40-foot robot stomping around with me. That's a good time.